Rift of Nations, session 26. Okay, we're getting closer now to the Taurus blockade, breaking into a high security prison to escape and rescue two NPCs that are very important to two different players' backstories, and we are going to be there next session. But this one is the setup, is the setup to the whole big thing. And I knew going into this as a dungeon master, this is the dungeon master notes where I say what I thought was going to happen and wanted to happen, and then we'll see if that happened. Okay, so I knew going into this session as soon as I was prepping it, I want a combat. We have to have a combat. 100%. We have to. Like, that's a fact. Like, we've been two sessions without one for lots of understandable reasons. We had some big stuff before, and then we had two sessions without one for some logistical understanding stuff. Lots of lore. We added in a new player. There was going to be a combat, but they diverted it. So, I mean, creative moves, but I needed a combat here. So at the start of game prep, I was like, all right, what kind of combats could happen here? They could stumble across some guards running towards approaching towards the prison type thing. They could stumble across some. I could have that be a combat. I could have all this stuff. So basically what I did is I put a spectrum of different combat possibilities out there. I had 4 different options I gave myself. I was like, the worst case scenario, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? What's the best thing that could possibly happen? They stumble across a bunch of guards that are all asleep at a campsite. This one was the Nightsbane. If you guys have followed with this whole story, there's a Nightsbane that had followed them down into the ruins, and they met him. He stopped them. He unleashed. He bet the Nightsbane. Nightsbane is one of the top 3 evil, the BBEG, or who's viewed as the BBEG, who's actually not. He has 3 henchmen called the Nightsbane. One of them they've met before, and they beat the players and they escaped. Right now, they chose to run, so they didn't actually have a fight with them, but they've encountered them before, which is cool and important to do as a dungeon master. Introduce something and then they get away, right? So this thing has been following them and found them, and that would be the worst case scenario. And turns out that's what they rolled. So anyway, I knew I needed to have a combat, but I came up with 4 different options of what would be there, and I was ready to go just in case. And at the start of the session, I did something called an omen roll. I had one player, the new player that just joined. I wanted to welcome them to the table, make them feel. I was like, roll a d20. And at some point, maybe it's this session, maybe it's next session, you are just going to put some karma out into the world right now. Give me a roll. 1 through 5, et cetera, right? 16 through 20 and all the little spots there. He rolled a 3. Nightsbane it is. All right, cool. So I knew the next night's rest that they had, the next long rest they had out in the wild, I had a map ready. I had a battle map ready of a campsite, right? Now, that could have been the campsite that they stumbled upon. If they rolled a 16 through 20, they would have stumbled upon a bunch of guards from the things having a campsite, and they were setting up for camp at night, and that's what they were going to stumble across. But reverse, it's their campsite now. Same map, multiple uses. Another great little tip there, I guess. But they stumbled upon this campsite. Well, sorry, they set up their own campsite, and this was their campsite. I asked who's going to do the night's watch. 2 people do the night's watch, all this stuff, and a combat breaks out. So let me rewind a little bit here, because here is the session prep notes that I had. Odin has info from the past, the Grasslands officers. This is just my little section for past history knowledge. And then here we go. Here's my checklist. They met up with Pocky. Check. Here's the information she knows. She had a magic item to talk about, and this was her plan of what she was going to do. She was going to stay at a distance. She was going to follow them at a distance because the group is crazy. You got a werewolf, you got a metal man, warforged person, you got a shapeshifted bird person, you got a nightmare walk. You have a whole group of craziness. Imagine a regular D&D group, and if some normal person came into it and be like, what can all of you do? And a lot of their stuff in this group specifically is unstable and crazy, right? So she very much was not feeling it, and so she was going to keep at a distance and follow them on her own, right? And then I gave them 3 options. Right? There's 3 different ways to break into this prison facility. So the prison facility is in the center. There's some water that runs through the center of it. Okay, cool. This side is a open field with a silent, like you have to be like the Grasslands nation of Chagra this is like their main prison, right? And they are known for their sound magic. They have very good sound technology, sound magic, art, well, all that kind of stuff, right? So this side was a sound blanket to where they could hear anything that happened. And if you're going to try and approach this way, you better not make a sound or they will hear you, right? High stakes, one roll. That was kind of the vibe here. And then there's the water going through. And then the other side was this like chain reaction thing of sounds where sounds go off, but if there's any physical bodies in these pillars of these different like boom, 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 the pillars would sound different. And that was sound out alarm, because if there's warm bodies touching it, it would mess up the vibrations and then you'd be alerted. So there's vibration pulse sound waves, and it would be kind of like a little puzzle they'd have to figure out of going up to it, setting their own sound waves and timing it up. And there's a whole little puzzle thing they'd have to figure out. So I gave them 3 different options because I'm a crazy dungeon master and I like to give myself more work than is needed maybe. But basically the options were 1 single check. How can you make this happen? Work together as a group to hit a very high DC. I have a group DC method that I use for this type of stuff. Multiple checks adding together into one. Really cool. This one would be more of a puzzle, the other option. And then the creatures in the water, there are like these blue salamander creatures in the water. And if they chose that way, they'd have to fight some creatures. So choose your adventure, basically. How are you going to break into this prison? And then once you get to the prison, you're in the prison and we have a whole thing to do. But I wanted to give them some choices, right? So they have not made that choice yet. I think they have. They're going to do the sound option, I think, but we didn't get to that part yet. So anyway, back to the drawing board. I had the different things. I gave them the 3 options and oh, whoa, I'm moving stuff around now. I gave them the 3 options of different stuff that they could have options to try and do, of different ways that they could try and infiltrate. And then they're going to choose their path based on all of that. They haven't done that yet, though, technically, so they haven't done that yet, though. And then here's the combat. It was going to be Grassland Scouts. If it was Grassland Scouts, here we go. And then that's not what they rolled. They rolled the Nightmare Knight's Bane situation. So what happened? I thought the session was going to go is I thought they're going to, all right, cool. They're going to get on the road, get out to it, chop, chop, chop. We're going to have a big combat, and then they're going to set up and they're going to break in, and then we're going to end the session in the actual prison. And I'm going to find a spot where there's a lot of tension. Something's about to happen and I'll end the session, or something big does happen. It'll go off and then I'll end the session. All right, cool. I love ending on cliffhangers and all that kind of stuff. But the players love to do some role play. It was really cool to see them kind of like talk with each other or in the other NPCs or engage with the story or do other things like that. So it took a little longer, and the combat, we didn't get through much. I'll explain, or we got through a lot of role play stuff and that combat that we made sure to have. And then, I'll tell you where we wrapped up here in a second. So what actually happened was the really cool thing is one of the players has lost his memories. One of the Darius, the sorcerer, warlock, druid type of character. Wizard, warlock, druid. Sorry, no sorcerer. Interesting little character he's got going on there. Nature caster, warlock. He has in his backstory, he has amnesia. He doesn't remember anything. One of the characters from his backstory, he has 2 friends. He had a guy friend and a girlfriend. As far as not a girlfriend, but see, this is where it's interesting with these amnesia backstories. So he had 2 friends from his backstory that were just there, were a bunch of friends. Okay, cool. But Darius has been using these memory gems to unlock more and more of his memories. And one thing that he found out from his memories is that girl is his wife. Like from his before, he was apparently like, oh my gosh, wait, what? And it's really cool, actually. I had originally just planned on it being a girlfriend from his past, and he remembered that they had a relationship. Oh my gosh. But I got a text message from that player during this week, and he's like, it'd be cool if they were married. Like, is that possible? And like, is that, he was, super respectful about like the maybes. And that was really cool. I was like, honestly, I just love that you gave me the green light on that, and I'll take it and run with it. I hear your feedback. You don't know what's going on, but we'll leave it at that. Right. So super cool there. And now it gives me the green light, because I don't want to force a character into an amnesia marriage. Right. But he really liked where the story was going. He really liked this character this NPC girl character from his past, and he really thought it was a cool story arc. He wanted to go into it, so we dove into it. So he has some cool role play with this character where he's like, do you remember your memories or all this kind of stuff, or do you like what's going? And so they had a cool little role play conversation, and then we went into the travel, and we went into the thing. We did a little fast forward of travel, and we got to the Night's Watches, and we set up. And then there was another cool moment where that player pulled aside the NPC. I love when my players stop the game to engage with the world, whether it's through an NPC or through a book that I threw at them or whatever, right? In fact, that reminds me about a book. I gave them a book. I gave them a super evil book, and I need to put stuff in the book. So we'll get to that in a second. So evil book. This is the behind the scenes stuff here. The Topps evil book. This is the sticky notes type stuff that I make myself for after these videos, right? So anyway, now they are about to have a combat, but one of the players wants to talk to an NPC. He talks to me, he's like, hey, if you remember your past, and he's been having these memory crystals, and I've been wondering why he's not been using them on himself to kind of get his memories back, but he's kept 8 of them. He's had 8 of them for so long. And I was like, what's going on? And it turns out his 2 friends from his backstory, he's keeping 4 each for them. So he unselfishly has been holding on to these gems for his friends to help his friends get their memories back. He could get all of his memories back, but he's saving them for them. And it was a really beautiful moment that I realized he was doing that. He's like, I want to give these 4 to you, and I have these 4 for Bassett, the other NPC. I have these 4 for him. I want to give these 4 to you to help you get your memories back. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's been keeping them this whole time. It was a cool moment at the table to realize that he's been doing this. I gave him inspiration, super awesome, love it. And then she starts going through and getting her memories back. And it was this really, honestly beautiful moment where a guy who knows that this is his girlfriend, like from a past life, and he remembers, she doesn't, she still has amnesia, and she starts to use the stones and she starts to get her memories back. But you get your memories back from childhood on forward is how I've ruled it magically, is how magic works for it. So she uses this and she gets the memories back, and they get to like relive it. So she's literally remembering and living through her life alongside them together. What an emotional moment for 2 people to share with each other. Now that can never happen in real life, et cetera, et cetera. But like, what a thing to bond 2 people. So it was a really cool moment to narrate and describe these 2 people going through. She's like, oh my gosh, when I was a kid, I remember this. I remember my mom, like, oh, and she remembers these things. It's crazy. And they're sharing in this moment. And the last memory she gets is when she remembers that they were a thing and they actually love each other. And she whenever she removes the gem, how I narrated as a dungeon master, she removes the gem. She's like, I said, every time she's done, gave her 4 gems, the other 3 gems, when she would like wake up and snap out of from getting her memories back, she'd be like smiling and like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. You wouldn't believe it. And like, y'all are just reminiscing about it. This one, she takes this one off of her head and she has this look of like, almost like shock. She blanks face, like she just saw a ghost or something, and she's in shock, and she looks at your eyes and she's in shock. And I paused purposely because I wanted him to start saying something, right? Like, hey, what's okay? You know how, what do you think? And whatever I don't even know what he said, because I cut him off immediately. I was like, she kisses you. And like, so then boom. And like, however much romance you want to put into Dungeons and Dragons, whatever. But it was a really cool moment. And I knew I had the green light to engage in this type of way, because the player told me like, this is something that they, thought it was cool and wanted to explore. And it was so cool. It's the most beautiful romance moment I've ever dungeon mastered, where she just realizes and gets all of the feelings and memories back from a love that she had forgotten from an amnesia magical type of thing, and she brought back in memory, and then they embrace and all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool. It was a really cool thing. It was a really cool thing. So that took up some time I would do it again 10 times over. You know what I'm saying? Like the plan of the session and where it was going to end didn't go on, but I wouldn't trade that for anything. It was super awesome, right? I love when the players engage with the world, and this was a really cool moment where they engaged in the world. So anyway, they have this moment in the Night's Watch. Also, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm about to attack them with the Night's Bane. I'm about to attack them with a big old, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like thinking about this back in my mind. I'm like, when am I going to attack? No, I shouldn't do this. No, I don't want to ruin this moment. Okay, I'll do it on the next Night's Watch. So they have their Night's Watch, they end it, and the next players come out and they do their Night's Watch, and they're doing their Night's Watch. They're role playing whatever they're doing during the Night's Watch, and I interrupt it with some weird water stuff going on, and then water combat happens. To not go into a super play-by-play with the water combat, it's something I had made up before. I had it ready from before. I prepared this whole battle from before, and they skipped it or whatever in the past, so I just kind of put it on the side. All right, cool. That's going to be something that comes up later, and then sure enough, here we go. So I didn't lose any session prep time, and it was really cool to throw at them right now. And basically, the super quick mechanics of what the Nightmare Watercaster can do, their layer actions and apex actions at the start of the turn and stuff was all like nightmare themed. Water going out to people trying to drown them, and there was like water. He would like surround people in water, try and drown them. And then if you had been exposed to water, he could make a wisdom save to tap into their greatest fear, and they'd start to be afraid and have this fear component. They have to deal with this extra mechanic going on of their fear, and they can these hallucinations they start to see. And he had legendary actions where he just blast out thing. And how I built him was really cool layer things that are going on to cause some chaos. His legendary actions were his main damage source. His legendary actions, he was doing stuff. He would just like blast people with these pretty high damage legendary actions. And his actual action economy on his turn was summoning creatures, creating disruptions, more water, like spreading water around, moving people, trying to suffocate them. And that was how I kind of structured it. Went off really great. It was awesome. I had a tiered elemental system. He would create an ad, and each round at the top of the next round, it would grow into a bigger version. So I have 3 different water elemental minis. Oh, hey, here we go. Check it out. So this is the first one, right? Little bitty. It's a vampire spawn technically. And I had this be I reflavored this to be water, and then the second form was bigger water thing, and then the third form was a bigger water thing, and then the next form was a super big water thing. And I was waiting for that, and I was ready to go. It was a whole mechanic and a whole system. And guess what? Every single time the players popped at round 1, I had assigned 20 health. These things have 20 health. All right. And if they make it around, they grow and they double in health and double in size and double into everything starts going crazy. Right. And they kept popping them every time. One of the players, the barbarian lightning mode shifts natural 20 one-shots one. I was like, okay, well, great. And if he hadn't natural 20, it would have grown the next time and it would have turned into a whole big thing. But he natural 20 crit it. So got to pay respects to it. And then the next time there's 2 more of them. Oh, okay, cool. No, there's 3. There's 3 of them. And then another player, natural 20 on their cat, Claude, who has the cat. Oh, this is a weird one to say in the middle of a video. The cat is a former druid who can control water. He was in his past, not past life. He's a druid with amnesia that can control water, but he has amnesia, so he can't. You see what I'm saying? And he, natural 20, was able to tap into it and kill one of them. And then in this moment, there's this really interesting moment. This is probably the highlight of the battle right here is they all start to get some nightmare effects. And I tell Darius, the nature caster person, I was like, you start to doubt yourself and your ability to cast nature magic. This was a lie. This was fake. This was just the fear effect. This was me flavoring the fear effect. And then he goes, well, if Darius is worried about catching nature magic, he's going to try and tap into his Kalashtar nightmare magic. And I was like, oh, what? And from his backstory, he had just unlocked and remembered that he can tap into people's nightmares. And this is a Nightsbane, which is made of nightmare. So I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to go for it. I was like, you can try and tap into it, go for it. He makes a spell check. He rolls over a 25. He rolls like 26, 27. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I made a saving throw on the guy. And so we're doing all this homebrew magic rules, and my guy gets into and taps into the nightmare magic that this guy's power is fueled from and goes nut. It was a really cool moment, really cool homebrew spell duel type of situation. Really awesome. And he taps into this bad guy's magic and pops the water elementals through this nightmare type of situation because they're connected in an interesting way. And he learned that they're connected in an interesting way. So anyway, big, huge combat goes off. They're able to beat him. Another thing, Odin the werewolf, he almost shifts into a werewolf, but he fights it. And then on his turn, he's like, I want to purposely try and do it. So it's really interesting. He almost turned into a werewolf, but then he fought it off and he didn't. But then on his turn, he chose to, because it's really important, and props to the player for a role play. He wants to control the werewolf. He doesn't want to let it control him. So he only wanted to turn into a werewolf and have a whole lycanthropy system. I have a PDF that I've done. I've done a whole video on lycanthropy. I love lycanthropy. I love having a player with lycanthropy. And he starts to try and tap into it. And he does. And for the first time ever, the character shifts into a werewolf on command and has a turn as a werewolf. Super cool. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And then, the combat's over. Everything's done. And then you still have a werewolf, and we gotta see if you can control it. And sure enough, one of the players comes up to him, puts their hand on, and says, "You okay, Odin?" And I let him roll with advantage, and he beats the DC, and he calms himself back down. So there's another cool moment there of this little werewolf story arc going of his path to controlling the whole thing. So lots of cool stuff across the board. Clara comes in with the final killing blow, slashes him, gets her killing blow on the big boss dude. Ivar actually ended up drinking some sort of potion that connected him to water. Q had his wild magic surge trigger into water, and which was crazy with the whole theme of water. And it was so cool. It was so cool. I love that I'm using a homebrew magic system so that all of this stuff can flow. See what I did there? Flow all together and stuff. It was super fun. Loved the combat. Ended the combat off with a bang. And then I was like, all right, where do I end this session? Okay, remember, Pocky was following from a distance. So they all finished their long rest. They start travel again. And during their travel, I interrupted, like, hey, I found somebody. There's somebody that's been following you guys. Look, I found him. And so like Pocky comes up to the group. Pocky is the NPC girlfriend of the caster, the nature caster. She's like, somebody's been following you guys. And she shows up and she pulls back the hood of this person that's been following you. And it's Astrid. And if anyone knows who Astrid is, that's amazing that you've kept up with the story this much. That really means a lot to me. That's really cool. If you don't know, Astrid is the sister of Ivar. Ivar is the fighter. The fighter Ivar's sister has been following them from a distance, and she's seen some stuff that's going to give them some interesting curveballs and some insights into an NPC that is actually maybe more than meets the eye. Ooh, interesting. So I left on that little cliffhanger of a moment. It's almost like a happy cliffhanger of like, Astrid, you're back. She's like, I've been following you guys for so, and then left on that into the session, and there we go. So the end of the top of the next session is going to start off with some role play, which is perfect. Love it, love it, love it. We're going to have the combat that just happened. Cool. Check that box. And then we're going to start the next session off with some conversations with an NPC from their past and that's been following them, a little sister that's been following this whole time. They're going to learn some stuff, and then they're going to have to do some exploration, try and get into the thing. So we hit all the pillars, and somewhere in there, we're going to have a combat again, and they're going to throw down, and here we go. So, and I'm going to be session prepping this live on a live stream. This today, actually, when you're seeing this video, it would be tonight. So a live stream tonight, 8:30 Central Time, PM, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, PM. Check it out. I'm going to be live session prepping the whole situation. Did that rhyme? I don't know. Stay creative. Things on the box. Peace.